I used to think silence was a personality trait. I thought some people were quieter than others, more reserved, more comfortable observing rather than speaking. And I happened to be one of those people. It was so natural, even reassuring, like something stable I could rely on in uncertain situations. It was so natural that I didn't even think to question it. It wasn't who I was, but it was something I had learned. Not through one direct moment, not through one direct instruction, but through repetition. Through patterns that didn't just allow me to exist the way I wanted to, but they were shaping me quietly. Patterns that taught me that speaking wasn't conditional. It was automatic. I had to think about what I was saying before I said it. I had to measure every word. These experiences weren't just individual, they were also environmental. I would look at classrooms. In classrooms, we would often be rewarded for structure, efficiency, and effectiveness. A student who was always answering correctly would be rewarded. He would be supporting the classroom. But a student who was questioning, hesitating, or even challenging the classroom was slowing it down. From this, we learn one explicit thing, that silence was thrust upon us. We couldn't speak freely, we had to control it. And one core question comes at every end of these patterns. Is this worth saying? Is my voice worth it? Is it worth it for me to stand in a room and be criticized by every person in the room? Over time, I realized it wasn't just me. In class, I used to sit next to someone, and I would realize that I noticed that silence. I felt it. I was familiar with it. I knew that he didn't have nothing to say. He did, but he was reserved. He was unable to speak up because he was scared that people would criticize him. Over time, I started making him feel more comfortable. I started opening the spaces for him. I started making him feel like his voice is truly welcome. And this process isn't something that's very slow. It's gradual. You have to slowly make someone feel like they belong in the classroom. And over time, he began to raise his hand, speak up, state his ideas, and it felt natural. He would even joke sometimes, and I felt truly proud of what was happening because I could make the difference that no one had done for me. I had to find out that silence was what was keeping me in my roots. I wasn't rising from it. I was deeply rooted in the fact that my voice wasn't enough. This wasn't just through the school. You could see the same thing happening in a larger scale. Lebanon is a very diverse country. You could hear any different political stance, you could hear many different opinions. It's loud, expressive. But through these loud, expressive moments, you can also see a structure that's not always visible. You can see that there are specific expectations that tell you how you have to be perceived, how you should present yourself, how you should appear. And for girls in Lebanon, this is even more specific because you can succeed, but quietly. You can be opinionated, but carefully. You can't be too much. Not too opinionated, not too loud, not too expressive, not too visible. And over time, you start to internalize these expectations. You don't need society to tell you what to do anymore because you do it yourself. And this doesn't just come through Lebanon itself, but it's something cultural. I'm Armenian, but I was born in Lebanon. Arabic is the language of the country I was born and raised in. but it never fully felt like mine. Every time I tried to speak it, someone would make fun of my accent. Sometimes it was subtle. Sometimes it was more obvious. But it happened enough times that I was taken aback. I stopped speaking because I was wondering, were people actually listening to what I was saying, the concept, the idea, or were they listening to my accent? Were they going to reduce me to the tone? And over time, I realized it wasn't told to me to be silent. It was manipulated. It was in some way more thrust upon me. It wasn't directly, it was something more on a long term. Because long term affects us more than short term. There's a psychological process behind all of this. It's called anticipatory self-censorship. This means that you don't wait for the world to judge you. You judge yourself first. Your brain learns from past reactions and begins to act accordingly. It begins to predict it. Before you speak, your mind runs ahead of you. Will people view this as uncomfortable? Will this sound wrong? Who will react? How will they react? And will this sound insane to some people? And over time, this series of questions comes into one. Is this worth saying? The theme of this TEDx talk is rooted and rising. And we are so deeply rooted into silence that we don't even realize it. But for me, I had to examine, I had to see what was truly making me feel like I was moving forward and what was making me feel like I was being held back. For me, rising meant unlearning silence. Because silence isn't something that comes from authority. It comes from repetition, through patterns that may seem ordinary, but they are completely changing your life. They're taking over your self-autonomy. You feel very critiqued. You feel very outcasted. And at one point, you have to question, is it worth it that I can't stand in a room full of people and express my thoughts that I have the right to? The first time I spoke up, it wasn't something dramatic. It wasn't even planned. It was so out of the ordinary. I was in an English class, grade 4, and someone said something that I didn't quite agree with. And I was very appalled by how fast I spoke. I spoke like I didn't have that years of silence thrust upon me. I spoke like no one else was in the room, and I was filled with immediate regret. Immediate regret. I thought the room was going to blast. Someone was going to scream at me. Someone was going to throw me out of the room. But then nothing happened. And that nothing meant everything. Because it challenged everything that I believed in. Every single time I silenced myself was for nothing. Because I was in a room. I was speaking. And no one told me to stop speaking. No one told me that my voice didn't matter in the classroom. They listened. They debated. And I understood that this disagreement didn't mean something harmful. In fact, disagreement means that there's engagement in your environment. How are we supposed to understand the thoughts of each other if we are not listening to each other's thoughts, if we are silencing each other's thoughts? I want to ask you a question before I leave this TEDx talk. Did anyone realize how many times I used the word silence? 25 times. And that wasn't accidental. Because self-worth, the worth of your voice, the worth of your opinions, are what truly matter for you to change this habit. You should stop thinking whether your voice is worthy, but it's truly when you decide that your voice doesn't have to be perfect in order for you to speak up. Your voice doesn't have to be as clear. It doesn't have to be as shaky. It took me time. After I spoke in the English class, I didn't magically become the person that I am today. I took time. I developed. I truly, truly worked on myself because I believe that silence is the worst thing someone can do. It took me time, but here I am today, in a room, in an auditorium full of people, not shaking, not scared, and I'm not nervous. Because once you take the initiative, you never go back. Maybe silence, we learned it. But everything you can unlearn, everything you learn, you can unlearn. Thank you.